So guidelines for effective weight management, some simple tips. First one is be patient. It takes time to get the results that you're after, okay? I think we've been brought up in a culture now, or our expectations are that everything should happen fast. We've got access to the internet, so I don't know, for some of you that maybe are a little bit older, that you had dial-up internet before. Can you remember how long you had to sit and wait for the internet to load up? And now it's like instant. If we don't get a page up in a couple of seconds, we're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I'm just waiting forever here. But we've got to learn to have a little bit more patience. It does take time, it does take effort, okay? It doesn't mean that you should be struggling or suffering, but it just needs to be aware that it's going to take a process of time. And I think a lot of people that have been in diets before, and these various different diets like your Slimming World, and these crash diets and things like that, because you've seen weight drop off so quickly, as I said it in the previous videos, that weight, it's probably mainly water weight that you've lost and stored glucose in the form of glycogen that you've lost, as opposed to actual fat. You come to expect that things should happen really quickly and that you're going to lose weight. In terms of that, it's setting realistic goals. And I've spoken about goals before and making them SMART goals, so making them specific, measurable, attainable or achievable, realistic and time bound. Okay, so again, if you want more support with that, you can always get in touch, and I've done numerous posts before about goal setting. So it's important in a lot of respects to have a goal if you have a body composition sort of want. Okay, so if you do feel for whatever reason that you need to maintain your weight or to lose fat, it could be for health and functional purposes that you want to do that, or if you want to put on muscle, again, you've got to set realistic goals around that, and you've got to have some kind of time limit. Usually it helps because it keeps you focused and it gives you light at the end of the tunnel. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to always be thinking about a diet the whole time. I'll hold my hand up and say that I've never done a diet before or anything like that. So I just go by living a lifestyle that kind of fits how I feel I want to go with my nutrition, and just thinking about the things I said before. What can I sustain? What can I keep consistent? And what serves the purpose of what my aims are? Is that to put on muscle? Is it to kind of maintain my body composition or such like? And it's just try to keep an awareness of relationships to food as well. Eating a well-balanced diet, that's really important. We've spoken about this before. So it's getting, the essential macronutrients and getting them in the right amounts for you. Following the guidelines, national guidelines. So, different portions of certain food groups to optimize your health, getting enough water, getting enough sleep. All these are really important. Another thing is not to go hungry. I think, that's a thing we feel that we should struggle in order to get the management of our weight, that we should skip meals and things like that. But that more often than not tends to lead us to binge eat or not make the best choices as well. And your body needs energy, so skipping meals and skipping, going hungry, it's not always going to be helpful for you too as well. Spoken about scales before in previous videos, and how that these are a form of measurement, but you've got to bear in mind all the other factors that come into play with the fluctuations with the scales, and also know your relationship with scales and things like that, and your mental health side of things, because as I say, some people can become really obsessed with the scale weight to the point that it really does negatively affect them and can lead to disordered eating. So that's another thing. You've got to be really careful. If you know that you've had a history of disordered eating before, or you suspect that you might have a tendency towards that, you've got to be really careful when you're doing anything in this respect. And seek help when you need it to be able to discuss these issues and try and find strategies to help you get into a better place mentally. It's really important that we do see these signs and we do take action upon them, and not suffer in silence. Speak to people about it and just be aware of your relationship with food and rely on support out there for it. Okay. Be prepared for obstacles and setbacks. Try not to be perfect. No one's perfect. I think that's a big psychological thing, that we have this idea of perfection, that we must never fall off the track. And as I said before, if you've gone off the rails and not followed your plan, that sometimes everyone goes, oh, screw it, I might as well just give up now. And that's like slashing the tires of the car when one's gone flat, as I said before. So you've got to think about the fact that there will be setbacks, there will be things that crop up. That's life. Life happens. Things crop up. Things don't go to plan. That's the joys of life as well. It'd be dull if everything was robotic and everything was the same. So you know yourself that there's been times where you've had maybe a really difficult week and you just fancy something, a quote-unquote treat. It doesn't mean that's the end of the world that you've gone and had an extra piece of chocolate or a ice cream. It's just, what's your next step? Okay, so just make sure that you get back on it the next day. Take action. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't go into that emotional negative cycle, because that's when the problems start, because then you go into that vicious cycle of feeling that guilt, feeling that, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and feeling really bad. And that just tends to backfire in terms of you end up just opting for less than optimal choices for your food again and for your health. Also, I think I'll probably speak about it more on the psychological side of things, but it's just getting strategies in place to help support you when times are trickier, because there's always going to be trickier times. Keeping a food diary can be really helpful as well. It just brings awareness to your eating patterns and habits. And sometimes we do just eat out of habits. Again, I'll probably speak about that in the psychological video that I'll kind of touch upon. But even just tracking your foods, like, again, that's something you got to be careful of not obsessing over it and making it that you have to track your food all the time. But just keeping a food diary can be really informative. It just lets you see how much you actually eat in a day. Sometimes you underestimate how much you eat, and sometimes you overestimate how much you eat. So it can be an important way just to kind of get a gauge of where you're at with your eating patterns, and is there any patterns in terms of certain days that you maybe end up choosing less than optimal choices. Why was that? What was that? Or also a realization of portion size as well. If you actually look at the serving sizes and what you take, and I know it can be a bit of a faff weighing out everything that you do, but it can be quite interesting just to give you a gauge of, I was shocked when I saw like what a serving size of say porridge oats was compared to what I was maybe pouring in and things like that. So little things like that can be really important, just to kind of just bring awareness. Like, how can you kind of alter things if you're not aware of them and you don't have a basic sort of baseline of some of these things. So it's important that you look at that as well. But again, not be obsessive. I know it feels like it's a lot of work to be able to kind of keep a track of all your food every day, but just doing it for a couple of weeks or a week even, or just a few days, and it just gives you a little bit of a gauge. And how are you supposed to know how many calories are coming in and if you don't know how much of each of these foods that you're eating? And I'm not saying that you have to necessarily count your calories in order to be able to have success with your weight management. You don't need to do that. You can kind of follow, just watch and observe your behaviors for your food and what you regularly eat and things like that, and then gradually you can kind of alter it. So you can gradually say, okay, so instead of 5 biscuits a day, I'm going to cut that down to 3 biscuits and have some sliced carrots and celery and some hummus or instead. So you're going to change your snacks. So these little tweaks, you know, you're going to maybe drop the calories down without actually having to think about how many calories you are consuming in a day, if that makes sense. So little modifications that you can do. So gradual modifications is a really good way to effectively manage your weight. So as I say, look at your own nutrition and your diet, so the lifestyles that you pick, and see where you can make those little tweaks. Doesn't mean you have to calorie count or anything like that. It's just little tweaks that you can make. And if you are then taking in less calories than you are burning, then that'll help towards that goal of fat loss, because we go back to that energy equation side of things. So that's a thing to think about. And as I say, there's little tricks and things that you can think about in terms of, I spoke about using vegetables to replace certain higher calorie foods in your diet. And that could be a massive strategy for you as well. Processed foods, maybe reducing those down because they're very high calorie but not nutrient dense, and instead loading your plate up with homemade stuff, so stuff that you've made from scratch, where you've got more control of what goes into it. You can use a lot more nutrient dense foods that fill you up more. Protein, it's a really great one for helping you feel fuller. Even certain carbs are going to help you feel fuller than if you ate all this processed food, which doesn't often fill you up. It can often be not as optimal for your health because it's not giving you all the good nutrients. It's also full of things that in excess can be problematic, like your sugar and your salts and all these additives and chemical things that your body can't process. So, you know, just altering how much processed food, the cakes, the pastries, the ready meals, even processed things like, you know, like your white boring looking foods, it tends to be the processed foods, to be honest. These dull beige ones, like your white rice, swapping that for brown rice, swapping it for whole grains when you're using any of these more complex carbohydrates, makes all the difference. It makes you feel fuller, more nutrients in them, and just more effective use of your calorie intake, basically. Okay. I think working out what keeps you satisfied food wise as well, because everyone's just different as to what makes them feel full and what doesn't make them feel full, so bear that in mind. Know your own triggers as well, so what can trigger you into making not as good choices as maybe you should be doing. I think reading nutritional labels is really important. So have a look. If there's ingredients in there that you can barely even pronounce, let alone understand, that's a red flag in my book. So I think even going with the thought of would your great grandma have known about these foods or eaten these foods, I think is probably quite a good one. Because, you know, that age group, was there these microwave meals? Was all these crazy numbers? It was simple, basic foods of, you know, your chicken, your pastas, cheese, just, you know, just normal natural foods that grains that you grow, and vegetables and fruits and things like that. But all these sort of highly processed foods that we've kind of become accustomed to now, I think that's something you maybe need to think about in terms of, well, was it around when your grandma was alive or your great grandma was alive? Think about portion sizes and servings. So as I said, this can be important, and again, I'll maybe post up some different guidance on portion size. Using your hand for a guide's quite a good one as well. It just makes things nice and simple. And just watch for marketing terms, because a lot of these marketing terms, they try and kind of lure you in with, oh, it's light, or it's reduced, or it's healthy and things like that. But there's not actually legislation around using some of these terms, so there's no specific guidelines. So gotta be really careful about these. And a lot of these ones that are reduced or low fat, yes, there is guidelines that it must be 25% reduced, whatever it is, fat, for example, than the product's previous. But this product could be really high in sort of some of these things like your fat and things like that. And often when they reduce the fat, they just add in lots of additives like sweeteners and sugars and things like that. So be careful of that. I think it's about educating yourself on nutritional information. Great thing now is that traffic light system. So it does flag up to you what is high in certain things like saturated fat and high in sugar and high in salt and things like that with the reds, and then what's medium and what's green. So again, it's just bringing your awareness and attention towards that. But remember that these are based on averages for an average person, and we're not all average. So your body will need slightly different things, but it just gives you a general guide. So that's important to kind of pay attention to that. So hopefully that's kind of given you a little bit of food for thought. You gotta love a cheesy pun from me. Oh, cheesy, there you go. Oh, it just keeps rolling. Sorry, it had to be done. I've been well behaved on that front for these videos. So yeah, just some of the things, a little tidbit as to kind of things to consider, red flags, and also things to kind of help you with effective weight management.